Hi everybody, welcome to Jin's Wall Street News. Microsoft Chairman and CEO Satya Nadella confirmed $80 billion in capital expenditures. Quote, "I'm good for my $80 billion. I'm gonna spend $80 billion building an Azure." Unquote. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the number of Americans claiming unemployment benefits increased from 217,000 to 223,000 in the week ending January 18th. For the U.S. stocks, S&P 500 rose 0.53% and the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.92% Thursday. Texas Instruments reported its earnings after the bell on Thursday and expects the current quarter's revenue to be between $3.74 billion to $4.06 billion, the midpoint of $3.9 billion, about 2.7% lower than the previous quarter's revenue. 10-year Treasury yield is hovering around 4.62%. Microsoft Chairman and CEO Satya Nadella confirmed $80 billion in capital expenditures at an interview with CNBC on January 22, Wednesday. In response to a question about the $500 billion Stargate project, he said, quote, "Microsoft is investing $80 billion in capital each year, and this year we are investing. I'm not particularly in the detail of what they are investing." He added, quote, "All I know is I'm good for my $80 billion. I'm gonna spend $80 billion building an Azure." Unquote. Actually, Microsoft's $80 billion in CapEx matter upcoming earnings for NVIDIA and other AI-related companies, according to Dan Niles, founder of Niles Investment Management. I'm gonna put this interview with Bloomberg Television a week ago to the next slides for your information. When it comes to NVIDIA and the AI-related stocks, Dan Niles, founder of Niles Investment Management, had an interview with Bloomberg Television, quote, "I think what investors should be concerned about is if you look at the biggest spender by far on AI CapEx, it's Microsoft. Microsoft CapEx has been growing at 70 to 80% year-over-year for the last 6 quarters. But on January 3rd, they said we are going to spend $80 billion on CapEx in their next fiscal year, which ends in June. But if you go and do the math, they already spent $20 billion in September quarter. They guided that up for the December quarter, which means they were going to spend less than that in the next 6 months. So if you are any kind of chip company that sells into Microsoft or any of these other big hyperscalers, I think you are going to see a dramatic slowdown in revenues by the time you get to the middle of the year. Right now, forecasters are for NVIDIA's revenues to grow over 50% this year. I don't think it's going to be even close. I think NVIDIA, I would be very careful on their stock this year. It doesn't mean over the next 3 years you can see still growth. I think you have to be very careful out of the AI-related stocks. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the number of Americans claiming unemployment benefits increased from 217,000 to 223,000 in the week ending January 18th, still low by historical standards, but it's rising. The number of Americans receiving benefits after an initial week of aid also rose from 1,853,000 to 1,899,000 in the week ending January 11th, the highest level since November 2021. For the US stocks, S&P 500 rose 0.53% and the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.92%. And the tech-heavy Nasdaq added 0.22% Thursday. Many of the US stocks gained Thursday, but big tech stocks seemed flat. Shares of Nvidia added 0.1% as investors are concerned about hyperscalers' CapEx this year. And the US chip stocks mixed, especially shares of semiconductor manufacturing equipment companies dropped as SK Hynix expects shipments of DRAM and NAND flash products to decrease 10 to 20% in the first quarter 2025. Shares of Texas Instruments dropped 4.58% in extended trading on Thursday as the company expects the current quarter revenue lower than the previous quarter's revenue. The company reported $4 billion of revenue for the previous quarter, down 2% year-over-year but higher than expectations. Adjusted EPS was $1.30, down 13% from a year ago, above expectations. When it comes to the guidance, the company expects the current quarter's revenue to be between $3.74 billion and $4.06 billion, midpoint of $3.9 billion, 2.7% lower than the previous quarter's revenue. In response to a question about the lower guidance than the previous quarter, Texas Instruments President and CEO Javi Villan said during the conference call, quote, "For Q1, about 3%, I think sequential, which is I would describe it as a seasonal decline for Q1. I will say that typically in Q1, what we do see is the personal electronics market would usually show quite a significant decline, just seasonality. If I start with the industrial market, most of the sectors that are kind of hovering at the bottom maybe found the bottom. And then there are a couple of sectors that are still showing larger declines, especially industrial automation and the energy infrastructure market that still not found it. I believe at the bottom, we will have to see what the first half of 2025 has planned for that. On the automotive market, similar to Q3, we did see kind of a pretty significant weakness, maybe with the outside of China. So it declined about mid-single digit, about 5% sequentially, unquote. 10-year Treasury yield fell right after the Labor Department reported that the number of Americans receiving benefits after an initial week of aid increased to 1,899,000, the highest level since November 2021. Then it moved up, but fell again as oil prices dropped after the US presidential speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The yield falls further to 4.62% as Texas Instruments reported the lower guidance compared to the previous quarter. Okay, this is the end of today's news. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.